Yes.
Are you able to hear me? Okay.
I can hear you, but really remember to talk very slowly, like if you're
Okay.
talking to an ant or something of that sort. So I will catch every word you
All
say.
right, Rob. I'll
Oh,
talk
what
faster.
is it you want to? What question are you wanting to ask?
Okay, I'm asking a question regarding, we have a group in Sacramento, ISKCON Sacramento. And then I posted in there that Gaur Gopal
Who is this Banu talking
is
or this is
teaching
Shravan
Mayavad.
talking?
This is
No,
Shravan.
Or who?
Shravan.
It's Shravan. Oh, okay. Oh, erase what I said.
Yeah.
Shravan, Hare Krishna Prabhu. Good to hear you.
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna.
So
Okay.
what are you saying?
So in ISKCON Sacramento, they have like a group,
Yeah.
communication on WhatsApp. So I posted in there that Gaur Gopal, that is teaching Mayavad, that just assume Krishna is not even a person. He's a universe or he's an energy, like that you were saying.
This is
So
an ISKCON
I
temple.
posted
They're
that
saying Krishna.
information.
Yes.
He's teaching Mayavad. So for saying that, they got offended and they deleted my name. They removed my name.
Really? Well, it's true, right?
What is
What you're
true?
saying is
Yeah.
true.
I even checked with the senior devotee.
How can he? So what exactly did he say?
Well,
I can share the post.
yeah, share it, please. Five minutes.
What was he saying? That Krishna was not a person, but an energy?
I'm trying to find it. Prabhu.
I'm trying.
So that's the thing with ISKCON, it's so how can you say? You gotta always watch what you say because you're participating in some kind of crazy.
So is it happening only abroad or it's
What we
happening
need
with
to know.
Everywhere. It's happening everywhere. They have set policies.
So what did the person say that Shravan responded to? Can you clarify what he said?
Here it is.
It was something that he published? He printed it?
There you go.
Don't worry, when God says no to your prayer, he gives you something better. But when he says wait to your prayer, he gives you the best. Gaur Gopal Das. It's an Instagram.
But isn't Gaur Gopal Das not somebody belonging to ISKCON, or does he belong to ISKCON? Because I think he just speaks everything about everything under the banner of Hinduism. That's all.
So who's Gaur Gopal?
It's a disciple of Radhanath Swami. So he's saying in the comments.
That's a sentimental or almost like a Christian, not Catholic, but born again Christian point of view. I don't see what it has to do with our philosophy.
I mean, he's saying in the comments, let's not get into the philosophical debate about the gender of God. Refer to God as he here, hence the disclaimer. Or whether God is a person or a force or an energy. And if you're a non-believer, let's even take the faith part. Let's replace God with universe or life.
I convinced a woman to become a devotee of Krishna because she said she was a Christian from India, South India, a Thomasian Christian follower of St. Thomas. And she said, I'm going only to worship and do research on God as female, because for 10,000 years, God is supposedly male. Now it's time for the opposite to be studied as God. And I said to her, well, if God is male for 10,000 years, then you switch over to the opposite, that God is female for 10,000 years. Why not consider that eventually the pendulum will swing back and forth until it stops in the middle, where God is both male and female? And I said, Krishna consciousness is based on Radha and Krishna, with Radha's name occurring first. That Radha and Krishna is the balanced energy, the yin-yang balanced energy of male and female. Only Krishna consciousness can demonstrate male and female in worship. Otherwise, they try to make male God because they want, they want to create a kingdom with a male king and go out and kill people in the name of God. And then the other side would be Shakti worship, where they're doing all sorts of rituals based on feminism, witch-like feminism. And so we can't have those two things. God is Krishna, Radha Krishna is male and female. When we chant Hare Krishna, we're uttering female, male, female, male, 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 female, female.
It's the
So
polarity.
where's the difficulty? She became a devotee.
When was this?
Oh, this was in the late 1990s.
Okay.
Banu Prabhu, share the post.
But the point being that what he answered was not very good. It was too much politically correct without enough intelligence behind it.
What's it called? There's
So
a
that's
some
going to be
devotees.
philosophical. The gender of God is not philosophical debate. It's not philosophy.
Whether God is a person.
God exists. If God exists, there's no such thing as philosophy. Philosophy is just ideas.
He's also saying whether God is a person or a force or an energy. Let's not discuss. Let's not debate it.
Without,
Share
without
the
the
post. You can
personality,
read it.
my God.
Oh, God is a person or a force or an energy. Again, that doesn't make sense to me, because God is a person and a person has energy. Prabhupada referred to Krishna as the energetic, that he is the source of energy, not an energy, but the force of energy, the origin of energy.
This is the post on Prabhu.
So this is all Latter-day Christian theology. It has nothing to do with Krishna consciousness. If he was saying that at an ecumenical study of different religions, they would all sit there grinning at each other and agreeing with each other. Oh yes, God is a person or a force or an energy, and they would come to no conclusion, or they say all of the above, but they would not delineate that the source of energy is the energetic. Who is the master of energy creates the energy. What? Yes, go ahead. I can't quite hear you.
Banu has posted it. You have to look at the post. You can read it.
I'm reading it. What do you want me to read?
Okay. Is that the whole post?
Yeah, it is a whole post.
Someone named, are we talking about someone named Gaur Gopal Das?
Yeah.
Yes?
Yes.
Correct.
Okay, well, it's how many quotes do you have? This one I was referring to. Let's not get into the philosophical debate about the gender of God, referred to as God as he.
The top one is his quote, and he is commenting on that quote in the bottom. Don't worry when God says no to your prayer. He gives you something.
Can you raise the quote? Can you lift the quote up a bit? Because all I can see is the top bit of the orange. You don't have to go the other direction.
Okay.
Go down, Banu.
No, now I don't.
Down, Banu. More. Right, there you go. More.
More.
There you go.
Keep going. Keep going.
It's
Can you go
Haribol.
further? Okay. Now we
I
have
would
the
like
whole
to
orange outline.
This is his
What
quote,
is
and
what is
he's
he saying?
comment over here on it. This is his quote, the one in the white background. This one.
there's a
What are you
Hare
saying?
Krishna.
What are you saying is it's not? What are you saying is not Vaishnava philosophy? Is it?
Right. Right.
No.
There's a Hare Krishna. There's a devotee in ISKM, the International Sri Krishna Mandir. They're like followers of Prabhupada. They have Prabhupada Acharya, and this
Yeah.
devotee, he has a YouTube channel where he is often, I've seen him blasting Gopal Das because he gives very general, vague, like basically inspirational speeches, and they're not really centered around Krishna, and they don't hardly mention the holy name or Srila Prabhupada or even his own guru. That's very rare that he is mentioning, and he could have very easily said the word Krishna in this post, but he's
Yes.
speaking so vaguely about God. It's not Vaishnava, like you're saying. It's not Vaishnava philosophy.
Before I became a devotee of Krishna, before I met Srila Prabhupada, I ran into so many people that took views like this. They were followers of Yogananda or Kriyananda, all these impersonalist or Sahajya guys were they were all doing the same thing. They were talking exactly like Gopal. He's not talking from the sattvic level of spiritual consciousness. He's talking from the Protestant relative. He's talking relativities about God, which is no service to God and no service to anybody. Nobody will benefit from this sort of talk. How can he talk like that? Who is he going to convince, and what is he going to convince them of?
What I
Do you
think
see
is
what I
that
mean?
he uses these quotes as a strategy to reach, to gain as many followers as he can, people who are interested in his content. And so I think that he makes it as big as possible so that he can attract as many people who are interested in spirituality in general. And he doesn't hardly deal
Spirituality in
with
general. He talks like Yogananda,
you know what I mean?
or Vivekananda. This is next door to impersonalism. I mean, where's the good
He's
part?
a cheater. He's cheating, and he's a disciple of Radhanath Swami that just kind of
Gaur Gopal
it speaks to the
doesn't
people
even-
I know Radhanath Swami quite well, and I can't imagine that he would approve of that preaching. Does he approve?
He does it himself,
because-
so that's what the disciple is doing.
Yeah, right.
Radhanath
that's what I was
talks
gonna
like
say.
that?
Yeah.
Oh,
I've never heard him talk like that. He always mentions Krishna very specifically. Has he
maybe when he's
changed
talking to
recently?
like,
There are many speeches
think that when
where he only
public-
mentions love, peace, things like that, and never mentions Krishna.
right, exactly.
In 2007 or 8, Rupa Manjari and I sat with at least 4 hours with Radhanath Swami in Chapati in India, in Mumbai. He never said anything like that.
Well,
That's
he can
because
say anything he
he's speaking
wants.
to Vaishnavas directly, you know, he's speaking
Maybe
directly to
he's
Vaishnavas.
changed.
I think that
Maybe he's
he
changed
speaks
since that time.
different demographics of people, you know, people who are not they're just general population, not Vaishnavas. He'll speak very generally, very vaguely of Krishna, not really mention Prabhupada at all. And when he's speaking to Vaishnavas, he'll change his mood, his mentality, and he'll start, you know, that's what I think. It's not really, doesn't have the true Vaishnav tattva essence, you know.
Well,
He's
are
got
you
more of a,
suggesting that Radhanath Swami approves of what he said?
Of course.
I would say
What?
that he wouldn't
How
go
can
through.
I have a hard time believing that Radhanath Swami would approve of what he's saying.
Doesn't oppose it, doesn't stop him from going preaching this
Does
way.
Radhanath Swami
Yes.
know what he's saying? Does Radhanath Swami know that he preaches like that?
Because Gora Gopal has like thousands and thousands of followers, like,
More,
you know,
more than that, many times more.
like millions. You got
More
people
famous
all over
than
the world
Radha.
listening to Gopal Das, and Radhanath is not batting an eyelash to say like, hey, you need to speak the Vaishnava philosophy. You know, he should have said something by now. Radhanath should have said something about.
Where does Gaur Gopal Das operate from? What's his headquarters?
This Chaupati, is it?
Is it? I don't
Does
know.
anybody know?
Gaur Gopal is basically LGBTQ. Actually, he's the plus kind. He got an award for that. By
He
the
got a what?
Sacramento governor gave him an award.
For what?
I guess because he falls under the category of plus.
I don't see what you're saying.
LGBTQ plus. So like, you know, people who are different, either orientation or like they're either a certain gender way or sexual orientation, and they're like all the alternatives. They put them all into one group called LGBTQ plus.
Well,
Well, what
in
he's
India,
saying-
in simple terms, it's called Hijda.
Well, I mean, just for example, he says underneath the orange line, let us focus on the principle behind these lines. If we keep going patiently, giving our best, even if we don't see immediate results, eventually God or universe or life does reciprocate by giving us something that is best for us. That is complete nonsense, you know, because that's not how you have to have correct platform of action and knowledge before that happens. You can't just say, if you do your best in ignorance, that you'll get the best result. How can you say that?
Speeches include positivity, speaking on the positive aspect of lives, and jokes made
Well,
public.
Now you say he's in Chaupati, but he was in Sacramento?
Yeah. So basically, the point is, there's room
What
for
is the point?
LGBTQ and homosexuals, pedophiles. But if you're following, devotion properly and you object to things, they don't want you here in Sacramento.
Okay, was he in Sacramento?
I mean,
Did
I
he come
only
to
pointed out that he's a Mayavadi,
Well, but
impersonal.
largely, yes. Largely,
So you
he's a
can't
Mayavadi.
say if there's somebody. Yeah.
Either he is a Mayavadi or he's pretending to be a Mayavadi. But he doesn't reflecting Srila Prabhupada's views it seems to me.
Not at all.
Very rarely does he mention Prabhupada or even his own spiritual master.
Well, he brings diversity of LGBTQ to ISKCON, basically. That's the whole idea.
Well,
So what does
you
he
mean he's
identify
acting?
as?
Anyway, we shouldn't
He's
waste
sort
on
of,
this. Rascal.
he's sort of a lower
Time on
level
this guy.
Fridananda Swami.
Yeah, one of those Kirtanananda
Never
standard,
heard
probably.
our devotees speak like that. And Shravan criticized him, and then Shravan was banned again.
Yeah, I said, he's preaching Mayavadi philosophy. So
Yeah.
they got mad.
They banned Shravan because he was telling the congregation members in the WhatsApp group that this is unauthorized and this is not our philosophy. So they banned him from the Sacramento congregation WhatsApp group. Shravan was sharing that how ridiculous
So
this is.
I'm going to be leaving ISKCON Sacramento. Since they'll be watching every one of these things with a fine tooth comb, they'll know that now. I don't have to tell them.
Yeah.
Because they don't have anything better than,
Yeah, they actually, that's one of the reasons why we couldn't work with them, because we suggested them to change the books to the original books, which we were following. At one time we were reading only original books.
Yeah.
But then when this Vaisheshika guy came, everything changed.
Now, what does Vaisheshika think of him?
Who knows?
I don't know, but
Visheshika. He's actively distributing these unauthorized books.
Yeah, right.
He's out there like a hustler, like selling drugs, selling these books unauthorized.
yeah, he's a hustler selling like drugs.
There,
That's
doing
really something. Hustler selling.
at the mood of having these hot books, but now he's just distributing these Arsha Prayog texts.
Which are these?
They're not poison, They
Why is he
tainted the text, and
distributing?
now he's there hustling. Distributing alternate Prabhupada, alternate Bhagavad Gita texts and all the changed books.
Yeah.
And then he's teaching, going out, giving workshops on a regular basis to teach people to do the same thing.
What's the same thing as what?
As distributing unauthorized texts, distributing Prabhupada's changed books.
He's telling them to do it. Yeah.
Yeah, that's the nature of
Does
this
he?
workshop.
There's only one reason that he would be selling the changed books, and that's the only way he can be a ISKCON guru.
Right.
They wouldn't let him be a ISKCON initiator if he did not agree with their policies.
No,
Their policies,
for you.
their policies come from the GBC, not from Prabhupada.
That's it. I mean, this question, the guru license will be rejected by the, GBC, and then he'll become a nobody. All his, privileges will be revoked.
Oh yeah.
That's the way most of these guys are operating on a dependence of ISKCON. They're not independent philosophers. They're completely depending on ISKCON, because if they didn't have ISKCON, they wouldn't be able to suddenly start their
Oh
own.
yeah.
Because they don't have
Of
that
course.
potency of
Isn't that a 2,000-year history of the Catholic Church?
Yes.
Exactly like that.
It's
The
funny,
Cardinals tell you what's right to think and what isn't right to think. And if you think like the Cardinals, you can make some advancement in the Catholic Church. If you think differently than the Cardinals, you'll be chastised. And if you go too far, they'll reject you entirely. And you go even further, then they'll kill you. That's exactly what they're like and what they're doing. You know, why are we surprised? In other words, they've taken the Kanista Adhikari platform, ISKCON, and they're trying to turn it into a replica of the Catholic Church. But there's no success in that.
it's
The Catholic Church is on its last legs. It can barely walk anymore. Pope Francis is having to concede to so many things that are anti-Catholic just to keep the church from collapsing.
sorry.
But why are we talking about all these things?
Well, I was talking just about.
Yeah. We can move on to the
Which
next
one?
topic. From
Bhanu Prabhu, can you share the GBC screen? Or the,
What?
not the GBC screen, the quote.
I don't see any quote right now.
Oh, I'll share it. Sorry. I have a computer here. 1 second.
I had a screen with a orange line around some quote.
Stop the screen sharing because the topic has been discussed.
Because?
The topic has been discussed. Went on the topic.
So now what do we do?
Correspondence.
Who's gonna read?
Who's on board? Who's on our program right now?
Hare Krishna.
Yeah.
Hi.
Oh,
Yeah.
Hey. Haribol, Matthew.
Hare Krishna.
Well, who could read this?
This is my friend Matthew. He lives here in Houston.
Hare
Huh?
Krishna, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna.
New devotee joined.
This is Matthew. He's a friend of mine. He lives here in Houston. I think he joined contact
Oh,
Ramachandra.
All for the association.
Jai, Hare Krishna.
Cool.
Well, if we're going to read that passage, maybe he could read it.
Oh, sure.
Does he have a good voice? Do you have a good voice for reading?
I hope so. Okay.
Okay, let's go for it.
1974 correspondence. The result is now everyone is claiming to be Acharya even though they may be Kanishta Adhikari with no ability to preach. Letter to Rupa Nuga, Tirupati, 28th April 1974. In the latter days of my Guru Maharaj, he was very disgusted. Actually, he left this world earlier. Otherwise, he would have continued to live for many years. Still, he requested his disciples to form strong governing body. for preaching the cult of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. He never recommended anyone to be Acharya in the Gaudiya Math. But Sridhar Maharaj is responsible for disobeying this order of Guru Maharaj, and he and others who are already dead unnecessarily thought that there must be one Acharya. If Guru Maharaj could not have, if Guru Maharaj could have seen someone who was qualified at that time to be Acharya, he would have mentioned. Because on the night before he passed away, he talked of so many things, but never mentioned an Acharya. His idea was Acharya was not to be nominated amongst the governing body. He said openly to make a GBC and conduct the mission. So his idea was amongst the members of GBC who would come out successful and self-effulgent Acharya would be automatically selected. So Sridhar Maharaj and his two associate gentlemen unauthorizedly selected one Acharya, and later it proved a failure. The result is now everyone is claiming to be Acharya, even though they may be Kanishta Adhikari with no ability to preach. In some of the camps, the Acharya is being changed 3 times a year. Therefore, we may not commit the same mistake in our ISKCON. Hare Krishna.
Well, that's a pretty good warning for what has actually occurred.
Yeah. Right.
Thank you for the.
This is where the yes. Thanks for reading. That was you read extremely well. You have a very articulate, clear voice. So
what's new? This is the same thing going on here in 19 whatever this is, 1974.
Well,
Now
1974 is 4 years after the Direction of Management was created, when the GBC was created. And Srila Prabhupada is immediately announcing or stating that they are not obeying it, are they? They had no election in 1973. So they rejected Prabhupada, they rejected the Direction of Management. So where do you go from there? You reject the document of the spiritual master, means you're rejecting the spiritual master. And yet they kept claiming to be following him and worshiping him because with a pat on the head, they could advance themselves into a higher position within the hierarchy and the structure of ISKCON, the imagined hierarchy of structure of ISKCON. So they were just simply trying to use Prabhupada, but in reality, Prabhupada was using them. Because Prabhupada was not fooled. He clearly could understand what they were doing. He warned against it in that other letter from 1974 to Kurandar, right?
Yes.
So you brought up. Because of that, we can see that Prabhupada was not fooled even for a minute. But what could he do? He had to create ISKCON to go on, not because he wanted a legacy for himself at all. He wanted ISKCON to go on so that eventually people would search out and seek, how do I become an Madhyama Adhikari? How do I become an Uttama Adhikari? And we have to admit that the Shastra is very vague in general on these terms. It makes assumptions. If you know the game, or when I say know the game, if you know how you go from Kanista, Madhyam, Uttama Adhikari, then one can see that the game is there to keep people from putting too much thought into things that far beyond them. But right now we're at a spot where we have to think ahead, because otherwise how can we go on for 10 or 20 years, what to speak of 10,000.
Uh,
Does that make sense? Jai.
Hare Krishna.
So I would say that Shravan has done a very wonderful thing by making clear that that man is not preaching Vaishnavism, and there's no way Prabhupada would approve of what he said. I mean, the real test of preaching is what would your spiritual master say?
Yes.
And
But the problem is
if
his spiritual master doesn't say.
his spiritual master is Prabhupada.
yeah,
Haribo.
but he
He
doesn't
doesn't think that.
know
He
that.
thinks Radhanath is.
This all reminds me of
Radhanath, if Radhanath stopped everything and wrote only his own books and asked his disciples to read them and not Prabhupada's book, that would be different. But he doesn't, right? Radhanath Swami, for whatever way, uses Prabhupada's books as the basis of his preaching.
He never talks
He-
about Prabhupada's books. So
he
how can you
doesn't
say
just
that?
use his- So
How he doesn't
there
talk
is
about
no
it in
such
public.
thing. It's a what?
He doesn't talk about it in public that I'm following my spiritual master's book, this wonderful book written by him. He doesn't talk like this.
Well, what books does he use? What books does he have his disciples read?
The journey within. He writes his own book story, how he came to Krishna consciousness.
Well, yeah, but
during
I
the
mean,
home.
but besides that, you mean
Ever since
what?
we used to
when I
have
was
the
at
original
Radhanath
books in ISKCON Sacramento.
Temple in 2003, I was at Ronald Temple, and he was giving class from Prabhupada's books.
Well, it's a ISKCON temple. What else will
May I
he
say
do?
something, Prabhu?
Yes, go ahead. Shravan Prabhu. Yes.
Okay. ISKCON Sacramento used to have the original Bhagavad Gitas. As soon as this Prabhu from God knows where he came from, but the Radhanath disciples, they came here. As soon as they came in, they introduced the edited Bhagavad Gita, and they started changing everything in Sacramento. I mean, when Paradeya Prabhu was, in charge, he maintained a standard.
Okay. But
So I'm assuming Radhanath Maharaj does not want original books because that's his disciple. He's a senior disciple of his, a Brahmin initiated, but he has a job that makes him a Shudra. But anyway, that's his problem.
right, but you were doing the right thing. You were using Prabhupada's unchanged books. They belong to ISKCON. Therefore, they use the ISKCON changed books because that's what they're selling. That's what they all agree upon. You cannot imagine that you would have temples selling both Prabhupada's changed and unchanged books, right?
Yeah.
From
So,
BBT,
but what you're saying is it's not just by Vaisheshika, and it's not just this guy. It's the whole ISKCON is like that.
No, not ISKCON
Right.
Berkeley. Berkeley, they don't have any edited books. Well, they do, but they don't have the Gita.
Also-
At least the Gita, they have the original Gitas at ISKCON Berkeley.
Well, that's
also
wonderful.
BBT in LA, they sell both the books.
Well,
Whatever you
but
want, you
who's
can
the-
get
who-
for your temple.
Who's the GBC for Berkeley?
I have no idea. Maybe
It's not under GBC.
Do they have a
It is
GBC?
not under GBC.
yeah. They have a board.
Okay.
They have a board, and the temple president, he basically takes care of everything.
And who's the temple president?
Jagannath Swami.
Right. So Jagannath Swami, then he is the temple president, but he does not follow the local GBC. Is that correct?
Yes.
Who is the local GBC?
The Sacramento also doesn't have a local GBC. I think the GBC is probably Badri Narayan or something. Or
Well, you have to know who is the GBC for the area, no?
no idea.
Okay, so what are we talking about? We seem to be lamenting and complaining a bit, but what are we doing to correct the
idea.
matter? How do we rectify the situation?
Shravan, how are you going to rectify the situation in Sacramento?
What do you mean by rectify situation?
Well, the first thing to do is to make people choose to follow Prabhupada or do not follow Prabhupada.
They don't want to.
If you're not
They
following,
want everybody.
if people are following
Because-
Prabhupada, they go to the temple, everything in the temple is what Prabhupada taught them to do, correct? The prasadam recipes,
Right.
the kirtans, the classes, the japa, the four regulative principles. How many things are there that Prabhupada did not tell them to do? Basically, they're structured on Prabhupada. So how can they say they're not following Prabhupada when they have to follow Prabhupada? Unless they follow, if they didn't follow Prabhupada, they would have nothing.
No, I mean to say
Huh?
about Bhagavad Gita,
Okay.
everybody wants, they're asking for the edited one because Prabhupada's isn't good enough for them.
What is their argument?
Well, their argument is they don't want to read Prabhupada's. They want some guy
It's
who
the same. It's the
failed
same
10th,
Gita.
didn't even pass 10th
They
grade.
didn't completely
Yeah.
change this. First of all, it's not about the
Yeah, but the
verses,
mood
it's
is
not about the
different.
translation or the transliteration. It's about the purports, right?
Both translation and
So
purports.
how much have they changed the purports? Have they turned them sideways? Or is it just 5% change?
Well, they changed the verse from for Bhagavad Gita chapter 2 verse 13 from self-realized to sober. And a self-realized soul is
Well-
not bewildered by such a change. The sober person is
We
not
don't know how
bewildered
many
by.
words are in there, but 10,000 words are different. They've been replaced with something else.
They've been
10,000 words?
They've been replaced to suit their mode of operation in this ISKCON system.
Well, yes. We're aware of that. But they still have Prabhupada's name on the book, right?
Yes. I mean, you can have
Okay,
any
So
name.
what are we doing? We seem to be going nowhere. This conversation could be powerful, but we're not being powerful.
I remember-
What are we doing?
Also,
We're
they
complaining?
removed
What
the,
are we doing? What's the power in this conversation? That we know how to complain?
I was thinking
Our-
no,
our-
the
our-
point is,
coming to
what do I do?
This,
I mean-
this forum,
If-
the League for 10,000 Years is meant to show the truth and present the alternatives. Right now, we should be developing elements that could be added to the website and the Facebook page that is being developed by Banu. What are we going to do? Go on Facebook and webpage and complain? Or are we going to produce the actual alternative to the mistakes and even deliberate lies that are being told in the name of Prabhupada? We can't just say, oh, we want the original books. We have to show why we want the original books. And there's plenty of Shastra to back up having original writing of the Acharya. There's no lack of that. Any single change in a book from Prabhupada or any other person for that matter has to be noted in a footnote and supported with an appendix at the back of the book. The appendix does more than, it's like a footnote that may go for several pages. So anytime you want to correct something which has been done by Prabhupada or any author, any noted author, I should say, that anything that has been done has to be documented what they did and who made the change. If they don't do that, then it's completely crazy. To give you an idea of the Bhagavad Gita, there was a Balakrishna in Canada, in Saranagati, had a daughter, K.D. Krishna Devata, and a son. The son was walking along the railroad tracks with his girlfriend, and a train came. And the son heroically got the girlfriend, fiance, off of the tracks. What they were doing walking on the tracks, I don't know. But he got her off of the tracks, but he got hit by the train and was killed. When they had the memorial service, at the cremation, you can't do a cremation more than once, right? They had the dead body there in a coffin to be cremated at the spot at the crematory. And they had a room full of people, maybe 100 people sitting, 40, 50, 100, I don't know how many people, but more than just 3 or 4 people. And they were all scheduled to, each one was going to read from the Bhagavad Gita as it is. So what happened is that every time a person began to read, the other people in the room said, "What are you reading? It's not like that in my copy." And they found out there were like 5 different editings of the Bhagavad Gita as it is in that one room, simply because people picked up the Gita that they bought. They didn't compare it to anybody else's Gita. They're all Prabhupada's Gita, I mean, but he didn't compare it to any Gita that somebody else bought. So it turned into total chaos, like the Tower of Babel. People were not speaking the same language. They had to ultimately give it up, that project of reading from the Gita, because they couldn't find passages where everybody's Gita was the same. For that very reason, and this is one of the strongest things I was fighting back in the day when they were doing the changes, was that universities have stopped using the Bhagavad Gita as it is for teaching the Bhagavad Gita. Why? You buy, you go out, you have money, you're a rich student, you go out to the bookstore and you buy all the Gitas. That you buy the Gita that you need. Everybody that has money can do that. But if you're not as rich, you'll buy a used copy somewhere, or maybe from the same bookstore. So you buy a used copy, but they don't say the same thing. The author is gone. The author is no longer there. And the author is presumably not writing with his arm coming out of the grave with a pen changing things in the Gita. And they look at the Gita and the changes and they say, we can't use this for teaching because it's not a uniform accepted book. It's been changed and changed and changed. So every time you get a copy, the older the copy, it's going to be different than the newer ones. The newer ones are going to be, the more recent ones are going to be different than the brand new ones. So we can't use this Gita. And I use that as a very strong argument. When it came up, I forget if it was a court case or a debate or GBC debate, we were debating very strongly that changing the books made them unusable by academia. The people that we were trying to impress by spelling Krishna K-R-S-N-A instead of K-R-I-S-H-N-A was coming from Purdue, Harvard. And all the pronunciation, the diacritical pronunciation, dots here and lines there and apostrophes there. All of those things were done in 1969. I didn't like that they were being done because I like Krishna, K-R-I-S-H-N-A. But Purdue convinced Srila Prabhupada in Boston in 1969, when I was personally present, to do that. Because he said, if you do that, that will be the Gita of choice for academia. They will use that Gita as the preferred Gita in every class in the universities. But what Perdumna got kicked out for saying things that diminished the status of the so-called gurus, the Kanista initiators who tried to puff themselves up into being thought of as gurus. They created huge misfortune because the books that were engineered to be the standard textbooks for the Gita and everything else that Prabhupada wrote would be the gold standard of translated and transliterated Sanskrit books, became not a laughingstock, but an object of bewilderment and pity, because you couldn't buy one that looked like the other one. You couldn't get two Gitas that said the same thing, even though the author was dead for years. How did he do it? Reach out of the grave with a pen or typewriter? So that's what happened. They have destroyed the authenticity that Prabhupada created by working with Perdumna on how to get the Gita. You know, Perdumna was in Harvard. He studied Sanskrit in Harvard, and he later on went to teach. And he's called upon all over the world as a Sanskrit authority, and the GBC kicked him out because he didn't recognize that they were worshipable. So you see, that great wrong has occurred. So we're talking here, we're complaining, or sounds to me a little bit more whining, about the book changes. We have to, if we're going to deal with book changes, we need to deal with them on the basis of academic acceptability and academic authority. That's what Prabhupada changed spellings in his book for reason only. So that, if you want to argue book changes, not whining. Let's change the book, go for the book changes based on authenticity. It wouldn't take that much. See, now everybody's thinking about selling books. When you go out, put up a card table and sell some books, that's great. But what about the reading of the books? They don't think about that. They don't think people are buying the books to read them. They're buying them to give money to the book distributor. So what needs to be done is and I hope, Banu, that you're taking note of this, and maybe you can write some notes to it or send me some notes to go further on it, is that the authenticity of the books is what is in question. And if the authenticity is restored, then the books will be not just selling like hotcakes, they'll sell like hotcakes no matter what's in them. Nobody reads them before they buy them. They buy them in order to read them. Or they buy them in order to put them on the shelf, or they buy them in order to give a donation to the nice Mataji who's offering it for sale. You know, who knows why they buy them? But millions have been sold. So now we need to get the universities to accept the unchanged Bhagavad Gita as it is. Now, when we say unchanged, I can become across a little bit maybe like a heretic to the unchanged book people, because I think there should be an edition, a scholar's edition, published with all legitimate corrections made in it, with footnotes and appendix at the back for scholars to deal with. Prabhupada's original Gita from 1972 should be the standard Gita. Very little needs to be done. Footnotes can be put here and there if there's any total errors made. But who has done the editing has to be part of the book. It has to be in the back of the book, as to say, these, there's 200 corrections in this original Gita that were factual mistakes, either in Sanskrit or in transliteration or translation or in how the purports were understood from the tape. Maybe the tape was a little different than the way it was transcribed. A devotee named Dina Dayadri, who typed 120 words a minute, was going over all sorts of lecture tapes that were transcribed. And she found out that the lecture tapes, whoever was transcribing them, she had the original tapes, which are not that common. The original tapes would say one thing, but because way back in the day, the person doing it couldn't understand Prabhupada's accent or his words or what was said, they just put something else in because they didn't know what else to do. They did the best they could, in other words. So those things are being corrected. So the transcription from original tapes, she did hundreds of them to bring them up to what Prabhupada actually said on the tape, not what the typist thought he said on the tape. So you see, there's a very legitimate problem there to be solved by greater minds than the GBC has or the BBT has, because all they're interested in is creating like the Catholic Church. They don't give a rat's what for the Bible. What they care about is making it work for them so that people join, are terrified to leave, don't want eternal damnation, will give their 10% of their income, and then when they die, they will give even more money, bequests and whatnot, just to guarantee them entry into heaven, which is in the material universe, Swargaloka. So that sort of thing was done in ISKCON, is being done in ISKCON. That's part of our topic of the 10,000 years. The League for 10,000 Years needs to deal with what do we want people 9,000, what is it, 9,435 years from now, is it? What do we want those people 9,435 years from now to have in their hands? Because there's no limit to how many times they can change the Gita in 9,000 years. Does that make sense?
Yep.
I talked a bit extra, but do you understand the point?
Yes, yes.
Yes.
Now, you read it so nicely. Could I ask you, what is your educational background?
I graduated high school and then went to a little bit of college, but at that time I was just wondering like what the whole point of it all was. And so I just kind of stopped going to college because like I just wasn't really impressed with the capacity for teaching.
Obviously, you had a higher intelligence because people go to college for one thing only, to get a job when they graduate.
No.
And if they go to get a PhD, they graduate a job teaching in a university. I mean, why do people go to college?
For an education.
You can get an education without going to college. In fact, you can get a better education if you don't go to college, simply by going to the library and reading thousands of books and taking notes, understanding, discussing with other people doing the same thing on the same topics. You're studying history, you're studying literature, you're studying whatever you're studying. You can go to the university, you can go to the library. I'm not recommending anyone who's a devotee wasting the time in the library, but read Prabhupada's unchanged books. But do you see what I'm saying? But when I went to college in San Francisco State University, I got my Bachelor of Arts in Literature. But I had already read more books by far than the professors had by the time I graduated from high school and entered the university. I've read a couple of thousand books. How many people have done that? I was a bookworm. I read a lot of books. And what did I get from the books? I got insights into the books that I could not get from the classes I took in English literature, because they hadn't read very many books, but they had definitely been given an opinion of what to think. Where did you go?
Well,
Oh, there you are. Okay. Does it make sense?
yeah.
So the same thing with my dream. I have a piece of property in Saranagati in British Columbia, 10 acres of land with a 4,500 square foot, 4-story log cabin on it. Big, not completed. I have to get a couple $100,000 and fix it up to the max. But what my dream was there was to get Harvard, top school PhD graduates in whatever field, bring them there, put headphones on them, and have them listening 10 hours a day to Srila Prabhupada's lectures, taking notes.
Jai.
And then having Istagosti, which means they will all talk together about what they had been hearing. Like if they were all listening, some could be all listening to different lectures, others could all be listening to the same lecture, then have meetings and discuss what they heard on that one lecture.
I'll be the first student.
Please.
I'm sorry?
I'd
Who's
love
talking?
to be the first student, Prabhuji. This is Shreya.
Who?
This is Shreya.
Oh, Haribol, we missed you last night.
I've been hopping in and off. Sorry about that.
Oh, okay.
I
Shreya,
think
right?
what you're saying, what you're suggesting is a fantastic idea. Having to read Prabhupada's text and discussing that, that'll be the best way to go about it.
Yes. So I was heading straight in that direction,
Right.
but I made a political or a sociological mistake. Apparently, I put up a sign when I had everybody there, like 100 people. I cooked for them, I cooked so much for them that they said, we don't are used to eating this much ghee. They're up in a cold climate. Said in Canada, we're not used to eating this much ghee. We're getting sick from what you're cooking, not because it's not healthy, but because our digestive tract can't handle that amount of ghee. Because I cooked everything in ghee. We had several people cooking, cook for 100 people. It's pretty easy. Not that many people. So I made the mistake of saying, putting a big signs up for the feast saying Prabhupada is the sole source access to Krishna Loka. You know Yadabar, who does those great videos, his wife Shaka, who took a lot of photographs of Prabhupada back in the day. They live right there. They're living next door to me up in Canada. And she went on the rampage. She said, how can you say Prabhupada is the sole source access when we have so many successor gurus to Prabhupada? And I said,
She said it
aside
because
from
she
the
wants to be a
question,
guru.
well, probably. Aside from the question that are they actually qualified to be gurus, even if they were qualified to be gurus, do they have another source other than Prabhupada? I say Prabhupada is the sole source access for them as well as anybody else. But if they consider Prabhupada the sole source access, and then other people consider them to be their guru, then what's the difference? But no, she went on the rampage. She went on a war. She contacted all the GBC, all the sannyasis, all the ISKCON members to shut down my program.
She's a very powerful woman. Don't mess with women.
Yeah, that's tough. She's a tough cookie. I never had much respect for her realization.
Are you
But-
familiar with Srila Prabhupada
They
saying,
like me, but they made that they made that movie was something about Prabhupada, right? And they put it in major theaters.
Yes, yes.
What was the movie called?
The mantra, the moment, the Swami, the mantra, and the moment, is it?
it's called Hare
Something
Krishna.
like that. What?
It's called Hare Krishna.
The movie?
Yes.
No, it said more than that.
The recent one, are you talking about? Prabhu?
I thought it was called Prabhupada's Movement in You. We don't know what the movie's name was. I saw it a couple of times in a theater. So anyhow, Vishaka was there, and the movie was a big success. Not big success, like blockbuster success, but it was a success. And it was quite good. My son Kubalesha helped produce it. And I went up to Vishaka and I said, well, there's one thing you've certainly proved with this movie. And she said, what's that? Prabhupada is the sole source access to Krishna Loka. You made a whole movie to prove that. And when I said it, you had my project destroyed.
You got tricked.
Not tricked. No, she didn't trick me. She was
No, I said
she
she got
operating from a Guruvadi point of view.
yeah. Krishna picture.
Just like that situation with this Mayavadi guy that is preaching, that we were studying his writing or his words. I mean, why she should be going after him, not after me. I mean, what he's saying is that sole source access to anything. Sole source access to average, whatever you say about God is true. You know, that would be an interesting philosophy. And is it true or not true? Anything you can say about God is actually true. What if you say that? Who's going to argue with that? Said, well, but what about this? That's anti-God. Yes, but if somebody says that about anti-God about God, it only proves that God exists. Anti-God means anti-who? Anti-God. Okay, there you go. That's God. Therefore, anti-God also proves the existence of God. Otherwise, you'd have to say anti-blank, and no one would know what you're talking about. You know what I'm saying? Word jugglery. That's all it is. And what he's doing is 19th century, early 20th century word jugglery, which I heard so many years before I became a disciple of Srila Prabhupada. In San Francisco, that's my area was San Francisco. I went to see Kriyananda, I went to see all of these yogis. And then the funny thing is that I went to see the same people after Srila Prabhupada created the temple in San Francisco. I went to see them before they opened the temple. And Kriyananda was sitting there with a guitar saying, I am a bubble, make me the sea. I am a bubble, make me the sea. He said, wanting to merge into the existence of God. And then I remember we had a program where devotees cooked, and there was a whole bunch of these Mayavadi gurus, like this devotee of disciple of Pradnath is a Mayavadi, obviously. And they had a wonderful time. They were feasting on the prasadam, they were celebrating, they were praising Prabhupada and praising us and stuff like that. I was thinking, that's funny. A few years before that, 4 years before that, I was sitting in the audience listening to I am a bubble, make me the sea, and was strumming the guitar. And this time now he's there, Prabhupada is preaching, Prabhupada is chanting, and they're all going gaga over it because it's so powerful and beautiful and excellent and perfect. Somebody has put up a superlative picture of Srila Prabhupada. Who? Do you know whose picture of Prabhupada that is?
That's posted by Maha-
Ramachandra. Who put up that wonderful picture of Prabhupada with his head in his hands?
Mahaprabhu.
Mahaprabhu Das.
Mahaprabhu? Who?
Mahaprabhu.
You're joking. Mahaprabhu, please accept my humble respects. Mahaprabhu, Prabhu, please accept my humble respects. That photograph, the picture is astonishingly wonderful. Somehow, I don't think I've ever seen it before, which is amazing.
Prabhupada, fantastic Prabhupada.
Oh, where did you find it?
Introspective Prabhupada.
You realized it, eh?
I love that picture.
It's amazing.
A picture speaks
And
a
you know-
thousand words, as they say.
Yes. You notice
Hare
that
Krishna.
Prabhupada seems to, yes, a thousand eons of words. Have you noticed that Prabhupada seems to be wearing 2 wristwatches?
Yeah, why is that?
I'll explain. People would come to Prabhupada and give him rings and give him watches, Rolex watches, I should add. I think one of those is a Rolex. Not cheap watches. They give him like very expensive watches. You know, even back then, a Rolex watch cost $5,000. And real Swiss Rolex, you know. And he would wear them for a period of time, then he'd hand them out to somebody. So he was constantly had different rings and different watches. And he wore them just to accept the gift as a gift, but not to own the gift, but just to have the gift meeting in his transcendental presence so that the giver of the gift would benefit from having given it. Does that make sense?
Wonderful.
Right.
So
Right.
Prabhupada, yeah. So Prabhupada would have that multiple. There was one devotee in Bombay, I think his name is Haridas. He had a most amazing history. He saw Prabhupada with a Rolex watch, a very expensive one. I think it was a watch, not a ring, but watch, Rolex watch. He was a criminal, and he wanted the watch. I mean, he lusted after the watch. He really, really wanted the watch. So time went by, and Prabhupada still had that watch. Time went by, and he figured out the only way he could get the watch would be to become initiated by Prabhupada. Otherwise, how could he get close enough to the watch to steal it? And stealing the watch was his entire motivation. So he became a disciple named Haridas. And he got closer and closer to Prabhupada and even began to do a lot of personal service to Srila Prabhupada. But the more personal service to Srila Prabhupada he rendered while gazing with longing and lustfully at the watch, the more he began to see that, like Dhruva Maharaj said, when he was meditating for Vishnu to get his kingdom back, when Vishnu finally appeared, he said, I was desiring broken glass, but I have found in you a priceless jewel, he said to Paramatma. So that's what happened to Haridas. He was there and he got to the point where finally his heart, the bands on his heart loosened, and he confessed to Prabhupada that the only reason he'd become a disciple was so that he could get to Prabhupada and steal his watch. That was his actual, he had taken Diksha, but that was his actual initiation, was confessing that he only took initiation to steal his watch. And you know what Prabhupada did or said?
I gave it to him.
He took off the watch and held it out to him. Said, then you can have the watch. And Haridas looked at Prabhupada, looked at the watch, and he practically had a heart attack. He said, no, I can never accept that watch. Never will I ever accept that watch. Because that watch was a lure to bring me to you. But you are the priceless jewel, not the watch. So he refused to take the watch. And Haridas and Prabhupada kept it. But you notice how interesting, Prabhupada didn't give a fig that here's a $5,000 watch, I'm going to give it to the guy that wants to steal it. You know, people don't think like that. There's a $5,000, oh, keep it away from the guy that wants to steal it. I'll hide it inside my shirt. I'm not going to let him see it, you know. But no, quite the opposite. Prabhupada took it off, renounced. He had no need for the watch. He was keeping the watch for someone else's benefit, not for his own benefit. I have a Rolex watch. He didn't do that. That there's a story like that about a fellow that was committed. You know, people have these different obsessions in their brain, right? This guy was a devotee. He was these are older times when maybe even before Lord Chaitanya, maybe, I forget the context. But anyhow, he set out in life determined to get one thing and not settle for anything less. And that is, he wanted the world's most valuable thing. So he went around and he kept seeing things that were valuable. Like, see, a king has this Kohinoor diamond in his crown. Oh, that's most valuable. No, somebody else has something even more valuable. So he wants to go after that. So he did like that. He was in India. He went around looking for the most valuable thing. Finally, someone told him about the touchstone, that if you touch any metal to the touchstone, it'll turn into gold. That way, there's no limit on how valuable it is. Right? I mean, if you say I want $1 million, you get a bunch of rusty nails and put them on the touchstone, and boing, there's $1 million. So he said that it's got to be the most valuable thing. I forget who had it. Might have been Sanatan Goswami. It was the time of Chaitanya, Sanatan Goswami. He went up to, he found out where is the touchstone. There's a, you know, the reputation of it is there. And he went up and he found the Sanatan Goswami and said, "Excuse me, sir, I heard you have this touchstone." And Sanatan Goswami said, "Yes." He said, "I'm looking to have the most valuable thing. How could I possibly get that touchstone from you?" And he said, "You're a saintly person. You probably don't even want a touchstone that makes gold. So how can I get this touchstone from you?" And he said, "You could just take it. I don't need it." He said, "What do you mean take it? You don't need it. You have the most valuable thing in the world, maybe in the universe, and you don't want it? You know, what do you?" And he said, "No." He said, "Well, where is it?" The man said, very greedy. He said, "It's in the garbage heap over there. I threw it in the trash." So Sanatan goes, so the guy goes plummeting through there until he finds it. Under the garbage, the banana peels and the cantaloupe husks and whatnot. He finds the touchstone. Touchstone, he rubs it. It's gold. Great gold. Yes, yes, yes. So he went off, he thanked Sanatan Goswami, and he went off down the road with his touchstone in his hands. He had not gotten more than 10 or 20 miles, or maybe 100 miles, or some sort of number of miles, when something struck him like a ton of bricks. He said, "Here's the saintly person, Sanatan Goswami. He had the most valuable thing in the world. And he threw it in the trash. That's strange. That's very strange. Why did he throw the most valuable thing in the trash? Then his mind started working. Oh, it means he has something even more valuable than the touchstone. Otherwise, who would throw it in the trash? So he worked his way back to Sanatana Goswami and said, here, I want to give this back to you. Sanatana Goswami said, why? I thought you wanted the most valuable thing. I said, I do. This could not be it. Sanatana Goswami said, why do you say that? Because if it were the most valuable thing, you would have kept it. You have got something that you're hoarding and keeping from me that is more valuable than this touchstone. Please tell me what it is. I want that. More valuable thing. So do you know what Sanatana Goswami did? He initiated him into chanting the holy name of Krishna, the Mahamantra, what we chant. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare Ram, Hare Ram, 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 Hare Hare. Yeah. He gave him the Mahamantra, and the man put the touchstone back in the garbage and sat there and chanted with Sanatana Goswami, with the most valuable thing, the Mahamantra.
So anyone has any questions? We got several devotees here, so.
Yes.
Go ahead.
Go
Do you
ahead.
know the context to which Srila Prabhupada told his disciples, don't be surprised at who leaves ISKCON, be surprised at who stays?
What? Say
That's-
that again.
It's a
Is
quote.
your name Matthew?
Yes.
Is your name Matthew?
Yes.
Oh, my brother, 2 years younger than me, was named Matthew. 2 T's, right?
Yes.
Yes. Yeah, my brother, Matthew. Matthew comes from the Latin, Matthew comes from the Latin Mattathias, and Mattathias comes from the Aramaic Matasyohu. So your name is originally Matasyohu was one of the Maccabees, and the Maccabees are the ones that fought the Romans at Masada until they were last ones were killed, and the Maccabees were Sicarii, who were what made the Romans anti-Semitic, because they came at one night and they killed 10,000 legionnaires who were obviously must have been drunk, killed them in their sleep, 10,000, and they ran up and hid in caves in the hills. So they kept on pursuing them all over the place until they found in Masada, so like the Alamo, Hebraic, biblical Alamo, and they went there and they killed them all finally in Masada. Anyhow, that's where the
Some of
name
those
Matthew
here in
comes from.
Houston call me Mohan Das, but I haven't taken initiation yet.
Well, there's no harm in being Mohan Das. Who said Mohan Das?
Papa Hari Prabhu?
Who?
Papa Hari Prabhu?
Oh, well, that's nice. No, I can't think of anything better.
What was your question?
Mohan is very nice. Okay, now, yes. You have a question.
I wanted to know if you are familiar with the context to which Srila Prabhupada told his disciples, don't be surprised at who leaves ISKCON, be surprised by who stays in ISKCON. Because it seems like really related to everything you've been talking about. And I mean, this going on with the books goes way deeper than like I can relate.
Oh, yes. Well, having been, when I took initiation, September 20th, 1968, my younger brother took initiation the day before, and such was our sibling rivalry that all of us made it clear that he was my senior godbrother. Even though he's 2 years younger than me. That's funny, right? But anyhow, okay. Because, later on, in 1969, the most astonishing thing happened. Srila Prabhupada was in Los Angeles on La Cienega. I don't know if you know Los Angeles, but La Cienega Boulevard was where our first big temple was. It was a church. Then Gargamuni and a few others put together some money and bought the church, which is presently on Watsika Avenue. Anyhow, we were there, and more people started joining, just a crazy amount of people. Every day, every week, 5, 10 more people would join, so it was just astonishing. And most of them got initiation. Tamal Krishna was eager to get them initiated because for him, that was the handcuff stick by which he could control them. So that was going on. Then Srila Prabhupada left. 30 devotees vanished overnight. They just come there to see Prabhupada. They just did it to have the experience of living in the temple. They were not joining. They didn't come to become, lifetime Vaishnavas. They came and took spiritual names and everything. Oh, look, they all made a dance, but obviously they were in the association with Srila Prabhupada. But they left, so that gives you a clue. Don't be surprised who stays, who leaves. Be surprised who stays, because people join sometimes for whim. So many people took initiation from Prabhupada, and so many people left also. So from what I gather from what you said, I have heard that quote before actually, but from what I gather from what you're saying and your interest in that quote is that Prabhupada offered a type of mercy which is completely forbidden to Vaishnav gurus. He did. Well, he took a lot of liberties like that. We could get into a conversation about the word contrarian. And my view is that Thakur Bhaktivinoda was a magistrate, and the opposite of a contrarian had Bhaktisiddhanta take initiation from Gaurakiशोर Das Babaji, who was clearly a classic contrarian. He did everything backwards. But contrarian means you do something backwards. In the movie Little Big Man with Dustin Hoffman, there's an Indian who sits amongst the Indians, and there's one Indian who sits on the horse facing the tail, not facing the front. And he was described there as being a contrarian. Everything he did was the opposite. It's like being dyslexic. I'm dyslexic, but anyhow, that's why I sympathize with contrarians. But anyhow, Gaurakiशोर Das Babaji did all sorts of contrarian things. He would chant japa in the loo, in the bathroom, in the latrines. Everything he did was opposite of what Brahmins and devotees are supposed to do. And so it took me a long time to realize our great spiritual master wanted his son to take initiation from a contrarian so that he would become, as his disciple, obliged to also be a contrarian. Now, why would anyone want their disciple to? Why would Thakur Bhaktivinoda want his son, the strictest and most rigid of the educated Siddhanta, Saraswati, the goddess of learning, Siddhanta, the conclusion of the goddess of learning, the topmost scholar of his time, even before he was 20. Why would he want that son to become a contrarian? There's no way for most sane people to understand that point. Fortunately, I'm not one of those sane people, so I was able to understand the point. Quite the opposite of a sane person, so I understood the point. And the point was, well, one of the things, I'm getting off track here, but it's very important that everybody knows this. So let's say I'm not on track. You're putting us on track. What?
You're talking about parampara.
Parampara?
Yeah, that's on track, right? Parampara.
Yeah, well, Thakur Bhaktivinoda told his son he had to take initiation from Gorkha Das, Babaji. He went there to take, Bhaktisiddhanta went there to take initiation from Gorkha Das Babaji. Gorkha Das Babaji refused. He went back to his father and says he wanted to initiate me. Said, ask him again. He went there and asked him again. Again, he refused. And then his father said, go and ask him a third time. And on the third time, he was crossing a bridge. And he said, if he does not accept me, I'm going to throw myself off the bridge and drown myself. Because I cannot disobey my father, who is my guru, you know. He's his son. He can't initiate his own son. But he was his preceptor. And so he went the third time and told him, if you don't initiate me, my father says I cannot take initiation from anyone else. I must take initiation from you. And if on the third time, you know, Vedic, 3 times, 1, 2, 3, like a triangle, right? 1, 2, 3, rigid. That's the standard. So he said, if you don't initiate me, I'm going to throw myself in the river and drown. So Gorkha Babaji reluctantly initiated him. Not with a fire sacrifice, but with a handful of Ganges blood that he put in his hand. That's contrarian. So anyhow, Bhaktisiddhanta went on to be contrarian. He rode in a limousine into Vrindavan with a chauffeur in a British limousine, which is completely forbidden. The sannyasi has to walk barefoot into Vrindavan. So everything he did was, he did so many contrarian things, all being a rigid Vaishnava at the same time. So, once again, also in Radhakund, I was there and I saw, here was Gorkha Das Babaji. No, what am I saying? There was Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati's Bhajan Kutir in Radhakund, one of the most absolutely sacred places on earth, no, in the universe, one of the most sacred places in the universe. And right next to his desk, which looked just like Prabhupada's desk, a coffee table. Maybe it was, coffee tables were invented in England. Anyhow, it was a coffee table. Prabhupada would use a coffee table. We never knew why, but obviously it was to copy his Guru Maharaj. Next to the coffee table was a very expensive, high-class English flush toilet. Now, why would Bhaktisiddhanta, who is as strict as you can get, have a flush toilet next to his desk? And I asked the Panda, you know, the Brahmin, who was guiding us around, why does he have a flush toilet next to his desk? And he got embarrassed and he said, well, you know, he had some difficulties in his old age, you know. And I was thinking, yeah, he could have put it in his bedroom, you know. And then he said about the flush, it's the only flush toilet in Radhakund. In fact, they don't even have the little Indian flush toilets in Radhakund. All they have in Radhakund is the only toilet whatsoever in Radhakund. And I just was astonished. That's before I got so deeply into the contrarian nature of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati. Is this too complicated an answer? Because I'm getting to your point. The question you asked. And it took me years. He said, you know, he had bowel difficulties. I said, no, that's not it. It couldn't be it. Maybe he did, maybe he didn't, but that's not the problem. But that's not how he did it. Then it dawned on me. Can it dawn on you? Why did Bhaktisiddhanta have an English flush toilet which had the name crapper inside of it because it was invented by a man named Crapper? So when you ever use a crapper toilet, they would say you're taking a crap, right? So why did Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati have a English flush toilet next to his desk?
Was it for English royalty?
It was of quality, nobility at least. Why did he have a flush toilet next to his desk? He may never have used it, actually. We don't know. But why would he have a flush toilet next to his desk? Think contrarian. Why?
Because he can.
Oh, come on. That's contrarian. So that's different. That contrarian does it because you can't, not because you can. You do the thing opposite of what you can. What?
Does it for the sake of being contrarian.
Yes, but okay. I'll lift the veil of suspense. Where did Gorkashore Das Babaji chant his japa?
Where he could get away from the people that annoyed him.
No,
And where was that?
the toilets.
Where?
Near the toilets.
I don't understand.
Toilets.
What did you say?
Yeah,
In the
toilets.
toilet, in the latrine, yes. The privy, we call it in America, the latrine. Yeah. So Bhaktisiddhanta, being a contrarian, put an English flush. He was obsessed with getting rid of the British. So he rented a British limousine into Vrindavan. He had a British flush toilet installed in his Bhajan Kutir, which he most likely never used. But he did that to honor his spiritual master. Huh? Does it make sense?
Yeah.
So why is that important? Why was making the strictest Brahmin in the history of modern India, why was it important for the greatest scholar in modern India to be a contrarian? There was only one reason, by the way. So if you come up with the right reason, there's only one, not more than one. Why? Do you have an idea why? It had
Is
to do
it-
with the subject.
What, could you ask again?
Succession. Huh?
I mean, I can't.
I'm going to answer you. I'm answering your question, believe
Is
it
it-
or not.
Reason that
Why?
Because
Bhakti
Gorgi
Thakur-
was contrarian, so
is
he
it
was.
Huh?
reason that Bhakti Vinod Thakur
Why
would-
was it so? Why did Thakur Bhaktivinoda want his son, who could have been the greatest Brahmin in India, and he was? Why did he want him to become a contrarian?
because he himself was only doing that as a way of people not having him suspected as totally lost in Krishna consciousness.
You're talking about Bhaktisiddhanta.
Bhakti Vinod Thakur. He
Oh yeah, but no, I'm talking about why did Bhaktisiddhanta need to become a contrarian? By
Because
being
Prabhupada
initiated by a
had-
contrarian. Huh?
Because
What-
Prabhupada had to be a contrarian. His disciple had to be a contrarian, so he became a contrarian. Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Maharaj.
For what purpose?
to
For going
trans
to
the
for going to the teaching
Varnashram
it.
Dharma.
What,
Preaching it.
I think you hit the nail on the head, but I want to be sure.
Preaching it to the Malayachas, giving Krishna consciousness to the Malayachas, and going to the West and preaching for a sannyasi going to the West.
Yes, you hit the nail on the head, Prabhu. Absolute perfection. One second, I'm getting something from the kitchen. Yes. He did that so that Prabhupada, Prabhupada was a very socially conventional person. He was a business owner. He had owned 2 big pharmaceutical companies. And Prabhupada took initiation. Prabhupada was no means a contrarian by nature, and there was nothing he ever did that was radical looking. He never put a latrine in his Bhajan Kutir or anything like that. But why did he do? Because you hit the nail on the head. First of all, a Vaishnava sannyasi can't cross the ocean. Prabhupada crossed the ocean in a boat. A Vaishnava sannyasi cannot initiate malachas. Prabhupada initiated nothing but malachas, untouchables. A Vaishnava sannyasi cannot initiate women. He initiated tons of women. He cannot create, he could create brahmacharis. He created brahmacharis, but he also created brahmacharinis, whole scads of unmarried Vaishnavis, not living with their mothers and fathers, but living in an ashram just like a brahmachari.
But
He gave sannyas to people that were as sinful people can get.
did
Prabhupada did
Prabhupada,
all of those things,
brahmachari
and he
means-
did so with nothing but a smile on his face, you see.
I mean, Prabhupada said every man could be a brahmachari, but every woman should
Yes,
get married.
he said like that. But so many unattached women that were hippie girls were not living with their parents. They were living in communes, or they were living with boyfriends like that. When they came alone to the temple, he had to initiate them because they wanted to be initiated completely against Vaishnava rules. To give you an idea how far it is from Vaishnava rules, I think Thakur Bhaktivinoda wrote some book, I forget, or described what can a Vaishnava do. If a Vaishnava accepts a disciple, this is now answering your question, Matthew Prabhu. If a Vaishnava initiates someone and that person falls down, he has to go to all of his godbrothers, offer dandavat, beg at their feet with tears in his eyes, begging for forgiveness for having initiated an unworthy person. There's the answer to your question. Prabhupada, as a contrarian, initiated nothing but unworthy persons. So much so that he said the quote that you said he said, I presume he said it, that don't be surprised at who leaves, be surprised at who stays. If he had followed that injunction, he would have had to go begging to his godbrothers 1,000 times for the devotees that were initiated and then left, you see. But that's because of Gaur Kishore Das Babaji, through Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, to Prabhupada, to people that Prabhupada recklessly initiated people, and so many of them left. So therefore he said, as Matthew Prabhu, as you quote, don't be surprised at who leaves, be surprised at who stays. That one statement is a contrarian statement on steroids. You see, how can we say that no Vaishnava is going to be willing to take the spiritual risk of initiating an unworthy person? Why? Because their own spiritual life will be destroyed in the process. If you initiate someone who's not worthy of initiation, your own spiritual creeper will be destroyed. If you're an ordinary initiator, as ISKCON has so many of. But the actual fact is, Srila Prabhupada did that, and he did not fall down. He did not suffer, because he was operating under the guidance, the spiritual guidance of Gaur Kishore Das Babaji. Because Gaur Kishore Das Babaji, by initiating Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, is an acharya in the Sampradaya. So that Sampradaya can do such crazy things. You want one of the craziest things Bhaktisiddhanta that Gaur Kishore Das Babaji did when he was living in Navadvip? One of the craziest things. He was so eccentric, he would run around with his genitals hanging out of his kopad and screaming the name of Krishna through the streets. I mean, that's not the crazy things he did. That's what people thought were crazy. But they thought one, rich Vaishnava, Bengali Vaishnava, wanted to have a party with up-class people in their silk outfits and wearing businessmen suits and stuff like that. They wanted to have a big spiritual get-together. And they thought, what a lark, what a great joke it would be. Let's invite Gorkashore Das Babaji to the party. And he'll come in, with his generals hanging out or going into the latrine and chanting or doing something that he was famous for shocking everybody to the core for doing, right? So they invited him, and he came. When he came up to the door to be admitted, his hair was in perfect array from a hairdresser. His clothes were impeccably upper class, better quality clothes than the people that had been invited to the party. And everything about his bead bag was perfect, silk, Tulsi beads. And he came there completely contrary to what they expected. He came as a better businessman looking person than they were. That is a real contrarian. You like? Isn't it wonderful? You like it? Isn't it wonderful? That these stories about Gorkashore Das Babaji, wonderful, no? What else could we call them but wonderful? Because they show the spiritual energy is separate from the form of even the pure devotee, like Prabhupada, or Bhakti Vinod Thakur, Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati, we look at their form and we say their form and their spiritual nature are one and the same. But then you get Gorkashore Das Babaji, you have to say the same thing. Their form and their spiritual nature are one and the same. But actually, as a contrarian, Gorkashore Das Babaji, his transcendental nature enabled him to do the opposite of what people consider to be Brahminical, or what a saintly person does, or how a saintly person talks or sits or acts. He did the opposite. And for that reason, Prabhu, you are on this call. Because if it were not for Prabhupada, none of us would be on this call right now. And we can all thank Gorkashore Das Babaji for allowing Prabhupada to be so sweet, so smiling, so kindly, so fatherly, so grandfatherly, so emotionally accessible. He can be all of those things while doing things that are the opposite, the exact opposite of Shastra. Women Brahmins? Are you joking? Women saying Gayatri? Impossible. I went to Krishnagar, which is near Mayapur, and I was walking through the street chanting japa, the way Prabhupada did, with his hand in the japa bag outside. And some Gaudiya Math chelas came up to me and said, "Oh, how can you do that?" I said, "What?" "You're chanting with your hand in your bead bag." I said, "Yes, okay, I'm chanting with my hand in my bead bag. What else is new? What else is new?" Wait a second here. What else is new? You are chanting, my battery was starting to plug it in. Oh, what else is new? Yes, I'm chanting with my hand in my bead bag. And he said, "And you're wearing a chadar." I said, "Yes, I'm wearing a chadar." And I said, basically, I am from USA. I don't know anything. I'm chanting the way my guru, Prabhupada, is chanted. I'm wearing a chadar the way he chanted, wore it, and how he instructed us to wear it. He said, "That's all I know. I don't have any other knowledge or basis." I said, "What are you saying?" So the guy from the Gaudiya Math, one of Prabhupada's godbrothers, said, "You're not supposed to chant. You have to keep your hand in the bead bag under your chadar when you're chanting. And don't chant loud enough for people to hear, because if they hear, they will begin to commit offenses. and you will be committing an offense by chanting so that they can hear you. I said, yeah, are you kidding me? I said, I appreciate what you're saying, and I can actually, being a scholar, reading books and all that stuff that I described, that knowing that stuff is fine, but I have only one thing I can do, and that is I have to follow the example of my spiritual master. I know you're giving me wonderful, perfect, impeccable advice. That's true. But I can't do that because I have to do what Prabhupada does, not what somebody else tells me to do. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So I continued to chant in that way. I didn't even hesitate. But so many devotees, when they heard Bengali drum beats, oh, I have to do the real Bengali drum beats. And the melodies, oh, I want to chant the real Bengali mantras, Hare Krishna melodies. Oh, I want to look like this. I want to do it like that, just the way the Bengalis do it. But Prabhupada said, because of Ramakrishna, Bengal has gone to hell. So why do I want to go follow a bunch of people that have gone to hell? I want to follow the person who's leading me out of hell, not a person leading me into hell. You see, Mahaprabhu has got a picture of me carrying Prabhupada up the stairs to Parshana there. So leading out of hell, yes. Out of hell into the palace of King Vrishabhanu, who is the father of Radharani in who is it? Radhadesh. And I had the chance to, Prabhupada is, you can just barely see him in the picture there, the black and white picture. Can you see it? He's just there in the picture. Well, you have to maybe move your screen and you have to swipe your screen with your finger and you'll see a picture of Prabhupada being carried up the steps of Parshana. So that's contrarian. How is it possible that I am Malacha from a non-vegetarian family without any atheist non-vegetarian family could have somehow, by a miracle, come to the spot in Radhadesh where I could touch the palanquin of a spiritual master of the universe. Not touch. Hold the pole in which Prabhupada's physical weight is bearing down. And I'm coming up the stairs like this. Because, well, however you see it. Come up the stairs chanting with Prabhupada. And that is contrarian. How is it possible that a Malacha who should have been on the road to the worst hell imaginable for all of the things that I was taught to do as a child and all the things I did growing up on a farm, non-vegetarian farm, can you even imagine? How is it possible that I could be in Parshana going up the stairs to King Vrishabhanu's palace, carrying, with great difficulty, because it was a heavy thing to do, Srila Prabhupada in a palanquin. If we can understand that, then we can understand what Prabhupada meant when he said, do not be surprised at who leaves, be surprised at who stays. Because look at people like me. How could they stay? How could they? Our habits are not that, to be Vaishnavas. But somehow, when I met Prabhupada, I could never leave him. So you can be surprised that I stayed. Are you surprised? Here I am.
Thank you very much.
Nice cake. Now, you didn't expect that big an answer, did you? Who would? Right.
Okay, any more questions or we'll end it for tonight?
Make sure anybody can express themselves. And I have to please offer, I offer my obeisances, my dandavats, my prostrated obeisances, and beg you for forgiveness for having talked so much. I get carried away in the thoughts and the feelings of those days.
Back to Godhead.
Always.
Actually,
So-
Prabhu, it's always wonderful to hear you.
Well, it's very kind of you. I hope I didn't bore anybody. If
Never.
anyone's bored, tell me when I'm talking.
And
You're boring me. This is boring. Shut up. Then I'll stop and somebody else can talk.
no,
Bol.
Prabhuji. And
Haribol.
Well,
Haribol, Prabhuji.
well, Matthew,
Hare
Prabhu,
Krishna.
would you say, I think my phone is dying. I can't put the video camera back on.
Okay, good night, everybody. I have to work tomorrow.
All righty. Hare
Yes,
Krishna, Prabhu.
Haribol.
Hare
Jai.
Krishna,
Hare
Prabhu.
Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you
Banu,
for
Hare Krishna.
engaging me. Thank you
Was
for
that okay,
engaging
Banu?
me.
Did you get the
Hey,
didn't we went through contrarian before, I thought, right? And Ramachandra, didn't we discuss contrarian Bhakti Siddhanta Gurkishan Das Babaji in great detail before?
We have, but not on this call, not on the Zoom.
Oh,
I think
really?
We did.
All I
Oh, we
can
did?
say
Okay.
is that
Okay.
if one, don't be surprised who is not listening, be surprised who is listening to this call. Because I'm the only person that I have ever met that actually got the essence of why why Thakur Bhaktivinoda had his son take initiation from a contrarian.
So question,
Wow.
Bhaktivinoda Thakur wasn't a contrarian, right?
Who?
Bhaktivinoda Thakur.
Bhakti Vinod Thakur.
Not
he
a
a
contrarian,
contrarian?
no. No, he was a magistrate. He was as straight-laced as you can get. He was working for the British. He was so strict. He was a Uttama Adhikari. Therefore, everything he did was being guided by Paramatma, by Krishna. So, prisoners used to beg to come to his court. They were on trial for a crime. They would beg to come to his court, not because he was very merciful, but because he was very fair. They knew if he judged them, they would be punished. If they were guilty, they would be punished. Because by being punished, you overcome the karmic reaction to having committed the crime. That's what punishment is ostensibly for. The court of Manu, the law court of Manu was like that. A person walks in begging to be punished. I've done such and so, please punish me. I've done such and so, please punish me. Because they knew that Manu would never punish a person unfairly. And if you, supposing you murdered somebody and you walk to, I murdered somebody, and you go to Manu, and so that person is put to death. But in the court of Manu, do you know what happens after you've been put to death for having killed somebody? You take another birth where you left off. Whereas if you sneak around and get away with not being killed for killing someone, so many people on death row are clinging to life with their fingernails, then you have to suffer like anything in your next life for having killed somebody. So that's the process. Krishna consciousness is the answer to everything. And why not?
Bhanu Prabhu will be the host now. I'm taking off.
You're taking over from me too.
No, you stay, Narayan Prabhu. You stay.
No, I can't stay. I've been talking too much. Somebody else has to talk. Manu can talk. Matthew can talk. You can talk.
Well, someone told me that Srila Prabhupada actually stopped taking disciples to Vrindavan for a while because somebody did a flip.
Did a what?
They did a flip into Radhakund.
Oh, they did
Because they
lots
did a
of stuff
jumping.
like that. They did it. Yeah, in Barsha Sarova, when I went there, if they were leaping into Radharani's lake, doing crazy stuff they wouldn't even do at the beach in the United States. I don't know if Prabhupada stopped them or not. I didn't hear that. But yeah, they did these horrible things. And they all tried to get me to do it. I said, no. I didn't want to do it. I mean, I never did like that when I was a Karmani. Why would I do something that grotesque from a devotee? But anyhow, these are very, I like your book, Matthew. I liked your point of view. I like your understanding. I like your questions. I like your points. By the way, having talked like half an hour on one question of yours, was it an okay answer?
Excellent.
Was it?
Yes.
It didn't leave any stones unturned, did it? We dealt with every detail of what it took. And that's why the reason I made such a long story was because if you ask a question, don't be surprised who leaves, be surprised who stays. It's because Prabhupada saying that opened up his, like Hanuman opening his chest and you see Ram, opening up his heart and saying, that I am contrarian. I have initiated people. Because ultimately, why did he initiate people that would leave? He's Trikala guy, he knows. Why would he do that? Why would he initiate somebody if he knows that person's not likely to stay? First of all, you never know if someone's going to stay. Even a pure devotee doesn't know. You can see the likelihood, but you don't know because that person has free will. That person could decide to do a very surprising thing to redeem himself in a way that no one would have thought possible, including Prabhupada. Not Prabhupada's limitation, but it's just Prabhupada gives mercy. The other person receives the mercy, but has free will. So as free will, he can go away, or as free will, he can stay. He can become very known. He can be very auspicious for many years and then bloop horribly. I mean, there's a lot of things that that a person can do with free will that is outside of the purview of even a pure devotee. All a pure devotee can do is ascertain, based on being able to see that person's previous lives. Before he initiated anyone, he could see who they were in a previous life. He could see what they could do. They could see what their training is. They could see their strengths, see their weaknesses. But none of that matters if you chant the holy name of Krishna. If you chant Hare Krishna, it doesn't matter what you've done in a previous life.
Yeah, well, there was one small detail of the pastime of the touchstone that you left out, and I didn't feel like it was important, but it's right after that he was asking, what's more valuable than this touchstone? Will you give it to me?
Do you know the story?
Sanatana Goswami, at that point, he told him, okay, first go throw it in the river. And then when he came back to throw it in the river and come back to Sanatana Goswami, that's when he gave him the Mahamantra.
That's right. That's right. I'd forgotten that part. Thank you. You're enlightening me. Yeah, that's what he told him to do. Yeah, I thought he threw it back in the garbage heap, but if he did that, he could have snuck and got it again, but he threw it in the river. That's the end of the story. It was a clean break. Thank you. So I told you the story, but you already knew the answer.
Yeah. Hare Krishna.
Jaya. Madhu, reveal your mind, Prabhu, please. What are you thinking? Like enormous brainy head of yours.
So anyone has?
Shakti.
I don't have any. I'm waiting for anyone
Huh?
to ask final question.
You're waiting for what?
I'm waiting for anyone to ask final questions before we close for the day.
Oh, you're waiting for someone to ask you a question?
Ask you a question. The many people.
Me?
Yeah.
No one should dare to ask me a question. They'll get an answer. Better to ask other people questions than ask me, because they get an answer, they better have a lot of time on their hands.
I'll ask you about that Srila Prabhupada Katha with Devotee Association another time then.
Which one? You've intrigued my
The headphones?
The what?
You were talking about getting people and taking them and giving them all headphones to play Srila Prabhupada's lectures.
Oh, yeah.
That
And
sounds
then they would take notes and then write essays. In other words, I wanted people to see Prabhupada's vision for the world of tomorrow, and I wanted them to be the leaders of society that did that study. Can you imagine all these Harvard graduates, instead of going out for beer parties and what you call spring break, they would be instead hearing Prabhupada on spring break for a period of time, and they would pay to come.
Jai.
They'd have to pay, otherwise what's the value? They would come and pay, which would, maintain them, feed them, pay part of the mortgage or whatever. And but that's not the point. The point is that they would have to give in order to receive. So they give, and then they'd listen. And then the point being that after they finish their course, which could be a month, 6 months, a year, 2 years, 5 years, whatever they want, they could continue to do. Then they go out, and when they teach college, when they go into government, when they become mayor of a town, they will be able to do things more like Thakur Bhakti Vinod than not, They would have a good wisdom. But the main thing is, if they studied Varnashram Dharma, if they studied Daiva Varnashram, if they studied cow protection, they would find out that the world will not improve by slaughtering more cows to feed more people. It will improve by milking more cows to feed more people. And that will be the greatest thing they could learn in any educational context. What? Where can they get better information than that, except from Prabhupada? How come you're muted? Do you have a lot of background? Do you have noise behind you? Oh, I see there's some sort of thing that sounds like birds. Birds? This time of night it must be owls.
I think it's from Tulsi Pati Prabhu's background.
Got it.
Not owls.
Well,
It's,
Prabhu, does anyone else want to say anything or even risk their lives by asking a question, but more or less say something that could be appreciated? I too need spiritual association. You all. That's so nice of the South. They say you all.
Any questions?
It's a good thing to say. It's very inclusive. Yep.
well, Prabhuji, I would like to thank you for
Can you come up a little bit? All I can see is your eyes.
Yeah.
Can you
Actually, okay. I wanted to thank you for giving us your association, because when I joined in and I was practicing, so I always had this feeling that, I wanted to be, it's like I wanted to know Prabhupada, uh, and I wanted to, meet uh, people who have met him personally and who had, you know, the it's so I wanted always, I wanted to get that feel that how it was back then. So the only person who can convey that feeling is the person who was there and who has experienced all that. So this is very, very much valuable for me. It's more like,
Well,
for
thank
me,
you.
it's like philosophy. It's like, obviously we have read books, Prabhupada's books. We are reading, we are listening to lectures also, but it's that feeling, it's that association. So it's I don't know how to explain. It's the spirit, the spirit. It's we
Yes,
can listen to any the his lecture, but it's more about the spirit in which he said. What was his spirit in
exactly.
propagating?
The Bhakti Lata Beach
Yeah.
from
So
the spiritual platform. And I might say that Prabhupada did say, you can read all of his books, but when you finish reading all of his books, their only reason he wrote them is so people can understand why to chant Hare Krishna. Because chanting Hare Krishna is what will give you what you're looking for. The books guide you to chanting Hare Krishna. We don't need to know so many facts. They're amazing. Read the Mahabharata, read the Ramayana, read the Bhagavad Gita, the Upanishad, Chaitanya Srimad Bhagavatam, Chaitanya Charitamrita. It's just like wall to wall nectar and ecstasy. All of it is. And it's great
okay.
reading. But
Uh,
what our greatest value of reading is so that we can then convey to others what is the
yep.
content of the Bhagavad Gita, right? So if we can convey to others what's the content of the Bhagavad Gita, is those your
Okay.
kids?
So no, it's actually there are some guests in our house, so I
Oh,
have to actually leave. So thank you very much, Prabhuji. Dandavat pranam.
offer them
My obeisance to.
my respects, and
Yeah, sure.
if they won't laugh their heads off, I will offer them my blessings as well.
Yeah. Your Thank you, Prabhuji. So Hare
We would
Krishna,
like
Prabhuji.
we would like to have
Hare
you
Krishna.
earlier
Hare
in the
Krishna.
session, so that we'd like to have you earlier in the session also.
Yeah, it's nicer if we can go earlier. Ramachandra, it's difficult for him, because of his schedule. Today, he blew up a tire on his car. He had to attend to that. That's why we started late, because otherwise we would have started Los Angeles time or Sacramento time. We would have started around 7:30 instead of 9. But he came in
So many people are there today.
drained from the experience of driving his car, having the tire explode. I guess he had to get it towed or something like that. Brand new car, but the tire exploded.
Mm.
Anyhow, wonderful. So Hare Krishna. And Anandaji, very nice.
Hare Krishna.
Yeah. So is that it? Are we complete for now?
Yes, Prabhu. You can conclude for now.
And Panu, your heart is so open and so pure. All of us engage in conversation with me so I can make advancement, please. I'm honestly saying that.
You're very humble, Prabhu.
Well, you know what we're doing? We're learning to open up our heart to the Bhakti Lata Beach, to the spiritual creeper.
Jai.
So if we just talk, hey, pal, how are you? Like football players hitting each other on the butt or whatever, that's not our job. Our business is to open ourselves and channel out what Krishna wants us to say in this time and space right now. right now, what does Krishna want us to say? Not that we make something up like that guy, that ridiculous guy that we were discussing, or Radhanath's disciple or whatever. No, not like that. Paramatma will guide us what to say. But I don't want just Paramatma to guide me what to say, particularly since I can still make so many mistakes when I think that he's telling me what to say. I want to hear what Paramatma has you say. That's Sadhu Sangha. That's Istagosti. The real Istagosti is when we are all together and Krishna is speaking through each and every one of us. You like? Matthew, do you like that idea?
Yes.
When Krishna speaks, we have to get to this point, because this 10,000 year thing could be crazy, it could be confusing, but if we understand it from a distance and look at it the way Sanjaya looked at the Krishna and Arjuna on the chariot at the Battle of Kurukshetra, we stand back and have a look at the next 10,000 years, we'll see what to do. And we'll start at the end of 5,435 years past, more to go. We'll start at what we haven't done and work our way back to now and see what we need to do. Now, if we don't want to stick around for that, there's no law that says you have to stick around for it. But I have a feeling the more we become advanced and the more births we have to take in order to become advanced enough to become the Madhyamadikari, that the more we do, the more we'll become captured by the notion of delivering all the fallen souls around us on planet Earth. Just not forever, just 9,435 years. Lord Chaitanya was manifested yesterday, 500 and a few years ago. So, when we have that on our table, I mean, look, my father was born in 1896. That goes back that's a pretty good chunk out of 500 years, isn't it? 1896 to 1896 to 1996 is 100 years, no? No, I'm mistaken. It couldn't be. Oh, maybe it is. Whatever it is, it's a good chunk of the 500 years of Lord Chaitanya's been here. And that's just my father, born same year as Prabhupada. He was born a few months. He was born in April, and Prabhupada was born in September, right? Appeared. My father was born, Prabhupada manifested. Significant difference. But I honor them both, because without my father, I could not have become disciple of Prabhupada. And without the blessing of having been born and raised an atheist, I could never have accepted Vaishnava philosophy as it is. I would have accepted it through the veil of Christianity or Judaism or Catholicism, whatever. Because you have to give up all that stuff before you can accept Prabhupada. Why? So I was an atheist, so I had nothing to give up. Nothing to give up. You have nothing, like they say, you have prisoners arise, you prisoners. You have nothing to lose but your chains. So all I had to lose was my chains. I didn't have to get rid of all the good stuff. Oh, you're going to die and go to heaven stuff. No. I didn't get to do that. So anyhow, Prabhu's, I didn't have to go through that ordeal. Thank God I was raised an atheist. In that same sense, I'm still an atheist, because I don't believe in any religion. I only accept that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and I'm part and parcel of the all attractive sorts of life. That is fine with me. There's no religion involved. Religion means you believe things because you want something out of it. I'm going to be a practicing Catholic so that I can die and go to heaven, blah, 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 like that, just mechanically. I'll go die and go to heaven. if I do all the right things. There is no right thing. An atheist
Right.
doesn't believe there's a right thing. So in that sense, I'm still an atheist. Because the theist means religion, not God. It means God. Theo means God. And it's from the word deus, and the word deity. So an atheist doesn't believe in the word deity, but I'm saying the way they present it, better off being an atheist. Because then you can accept Prabhupada without anything holding you back.
Matthew Prabhu, can you give me your number? We'll include you in the WhatsApp group.
Okay, I'm gonna enter it.
That's really nice that I mentioned this group meeting to Matthew some time ago, and actually Prabhu was Narayan was telling a story yesterday that Matthew was telling me some time ago about the sages and what they should do, and like they should die or they should live or die like that. He was telling that, and then that was reminding me yesterday, and then suddenly you appeared today in today's group. So it was kind of seems like auspicious because of those signs that
Yeah.
for all of
And
us.
today is very auspicious. I think everything just moved beautifully in harmony. And Matthew became a great asset to all of us. And you're all a great asset. Banu is a permanent asset. Banu is like a rock in the middle of a big stormy ocean. The waves can come and crash all over the rock, but the rock doesn't move.
May you either live or die.
Yes, yeah. You were part of that yesterday?
No, he was telling me that story some time ago, and then you told it yesterday. You told it yesterday, so I was like, well, this is interesting, and then Matthew appeared today, so.
So thanks everyone for the association. We hope to see you again in the next session. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.